Before I get into this, I completely understand I made some bad choices in here, and this is completely the consequences of my own actions that I'm dealing with. This is also very long-winded with lots of context. You've been warned. I, F20, got into a relationship with M23, about a year ago. I absolutely love him. He's been the best boyfriend I've ever had. We just click well. We've been living together for 6 months, and we've hardly ever argued. We are able to support each other's personal issues and really help each other. He has a fantastic job and has been able to support us very well since I lost my job at the beginning of October. He's incredibly stable, and I know he's my right choice. There's so much potential to build a great life together, and I intend on doing my part to make sure that happens. The bad decisions here involve K, M21. K was one of my oldest friends. We met when I was 16, and we immediately clicked and understood each other. That's so incredibly rare. We understood each other in a way that is so comforting to have a friend who feels that way. We had a brief relationship. It was 3 months long. We got to see each other a total of maybe 6 times that entire time because he lived an hour away and we were both minors who had to deal with school, curfews, etc., etc. That relationship didn't end well at all, and he admitted openly that he really fucked up and should have put as much effort into it as I had. His actions and the fall of our relationship led to me hating him for 3 years. During those 3 years, he'd try to reconnect every single year around the same time. It always went like this. 1. Message with a, "Hey, how are you?" 2. Quick recap of the last year. 3. Telling me he decided to message me after hearing a sad country song that reminded him of me. Enter some sort of sad country song about how the singer mourned the loss of the one who got away. 4. Me lashing out and using him as an emotional punching bag, and him just weathering it until one of us burnt out of the emotional ability to be a part of such a toxic loop. This last summer, however, I had been able to go through some therapy and actually sit down and actually work through all of the shitty emotions. I was actually able to take his apologies, accept them, and forgive him for his actions. This is rare, but he too had actually been able to genuinely understand how much he had hurt me and wanted to make it right again. After we did the uncomfortable job of sitting down together and working through all of the trauma and emotions we had caused to each other and with each other, we both came to the conclusion that teenage hormones are whack, and we'd always been better off as friends. We began again, an uneasy friendship that eventually made it back to him being my closest friend and confidant, considering he was also technically my oldest friend and genuinely knew me better than almost anyone. I had been in a relationship with M at this point for a while, and I had placed boundaries in order to be respectful of my current relationship. He was incredibly respectful of those, as was I. N and I also had an agreement that friendships with the other gender were completely fine, as long as we were both communicative and listened if the other partner had issues. He had a female best friend, J, F24, that had been around before me and was his closest and oldest friend. I respected that and didn't feel a need to monitor that friendship because I trusted M completely. Eventually, Jay started doing things I wasn't comfortable with, and every time an incident happened, I would bring it up to M and ask him to handle it as he saw fit. These incidents escalated into the story I'm about to detail. At the beginning of October, I was incredibly sick. I was coughing up blood, blacking out, etc., etc. I was also taking care of my parents' house at the time and trying to stay away from M as much as I possible because he is immunocompromised and I didn't want him getting as sick as I was or worse, which means that him and I were in 2 separate locations on a weekend. He understood that he was the one I was depending on at that point because my parents were out of town. If I needed medication from town or something along the lines, I'd call him because I wasn't in any condition to drive. I left him alone all day because I didn't need anything, but I also wanted him to enjoy his weekend and do as he will without worrying about me. I knew he was out hanging out with one of his guy friends, working on his truck. That's all I knew. Around 9 p.m., I needed meds from town, so I called M. No answer. I checked his location, it said it was at home, so I called 4 more times. Also no answer. I, at this point, became incredibly worried about him, so I called M and I's roommate to go check on M. Our roommate told me M wasn't home, but his truck was. I called his friend's wife to see if he had ended up at their home with his friend. M's friend was there, he was not. So at this point, all I know is that M isn't home, his phone is turned off, he's not with who I thought he was, and I really needed medication before all the stores closed. I made the decision to drive myself to get this medication and had to pull over twice in order to have coughing fits and spit blood out the window. I got myself my medication and drove home. I tried to call him a few more times because I was genuinely worried that he was dead in a ditch somewhere. After a few more hours, around midnight, he finally texts me. His phone was turned off because he had been at a corn maze with Jay. I was extremely upset because he felt the need to hide the fact he did that from me in 2 ways. He told me he was with his guy friend, and he felt the need to turn off his phone. At this point in our relationship, I knew in my bones he would never cheat on me. But I also knew that Jay was in some capacity jealous of me taking Em away from her. I told him I was upset and that I was going to bed. The next morning, he shows up to my parents' house to apologize and explain. He tells me, "Oh no, it's fine. It wasn't just Jay and I. Your ex, who I told Em had quite literally hit me, who was also friends with Jay, and Em had decided he no longer wanted anything to do with, supposedly up to this point, was there too. And I didn't turn off my phone, it died, and I couldn't charge it till I was home again. And I didn't even want to go. I was drunk from hanging out with Guy Fund all day. I was in bed about to go to sleep when they dragged me out of bed and forced me to go." At this time, I'd like to state that my boyfriend, M, is 6.5 feet tall and 300 pounds. There is no way that if he really didn't want out of bed, an out-of-shape 5'6" woman and a scrawny 5'11" dude could get him out of bed, let alone drag him through a corn maze if he hadn't wanted to go. But whatever, he turned the tears on and I was a sucker for it. I forgave him, and once I was better, went home with him again. Once I was at home, I found one of Jay's press-on nails on my side of the bed. I showed it to Em and started packing my things. Women don't just lose those, especially in one of their platonic guy friends' rooms. He told me that she had lost it while trying to drag him out of bed. That's totally plausible, but I still needed time to think on everything, so I spent 2 weeks sleeping on my parents' couch. During those weeks, I confided in my closest friend, Kay, and he told me that if worst came to worse, I was welcome to his spare bedroom, and we'd figure out bills once I was on my feet again and had a job. I told him I very much appreciate his offer, and that if I did take him up on that, it would be a while before doing so. I later told my sister about everything, including the offer from Kay. All of this was through text. Eventually, I decided that I'd try and give Em another shot, even though my trust in him was very shaken, and I still wasn't 100% sure he hadn't cheated on me that night. I told Em that because of that trust being eroded, I was no longer comfortable with him being friends with Jay any longer. He was upset about that, understandably. This woman was his longest friend, and that hurts to decide. After a while, and our relationship being back on more or less steady ground, we find ourselves running errands in Kay's town and decide to stop by, more or less unannounced. Em sees a condom on Kay's end table and is very upset by that because he felt as if that condom had been laid out for me. Keep in mind, Kay is a single man in his early 20s. Of course the man is going to have condoms in his house that he doesn't share with anyone. It's not my business what his sexual habits are, but it's fair to assume that he fucks. Whatever. Later, Em decides to go through my phone while I'm taking a nap and looks at my sister and I's chat to see my side of things. This was strange behavior because throughout our entire relationship, though we've both had each other's passwords and full access to each other's phones, we've never felt the need to search each other's phones, least of all behind the other's back. He finds Kay's offer of moving me into his spare room and again loses his shit. He asks me to stop talking to Kay. During this entire fiasco, I get the distinct feeling that he is reaching for straws, maybe even projecting on me a little. And him asking me to cut Kay out more or less felt like retribution for me asking him to cut Jay out. I agree, and I meet up for coffee in a public place with Kay to explain everything and give him something I had already promised to make for him. He understands, but we're both very, very bummed. We stop talking, but a week into it, I receive a call from Kay at about 8:30 at night. I'm afraid that something bad had happened, so I answered. And it turns out that he had bought a vintage $1,200 dirt bike that he wants to fix up, and needed my help diagnosing the issue and fixing it. For context, I am a certified Honda, Harley, and Polaris mechanic. I went to MMI Avondale for trade school. This clocked as very strange to me, because before we stopped talking, he had never mentioned buying a dirt bike at all. And I feel like spending over $1,000 on something is definitely something that's worth putting more than a week's thought into, and probably worth mentioning to the person you're expecting to help fix it. I tell him it was inappropriate to call me, that we had stopped talking out of respect to M and his wishes, but he had me on the call anyway, and to tell me what its issues were. I was more or less able to diagnose what the problem probably was, and walked him through how to disassemble and clean the problem issue. Carburetor with old gummy gas, believe it or not. Here's where I fuck up. Kay found his in again, and we start talking again, platonically, completely, behind M's back, for about a week and a half. I feel gross about it the entire time, but that still didn't stop me from doing the shitty thing and continue talking to Kay. It boiled down to last night where he called me, told me he could no longer be friends with me respectfully because he developed feelings for me, and that he had a girl over the night before, but he wanted to text me more than spend time with the girl, and he realized he was developing feelings for me once again, and that it's not fair to M and I's relationship, respectful to me for being friends with me under false pretenses, or respectful to these women that he is attempting to pursue a relationship with. I told him I completely understood that I've been feeling really gross about us still being friends behind M's back, and that I too had been kind of catching feelings for Kay too, and that's not fair to anyone at all. We really called it quits last night, hopefully, but now I feel really gross inside and kind of like a shitty person for letting it go that far. This is the end of my story. And as I was writing this, I began to understand more and more how much of a shitty B-movie situation this is. I fucked up, and now I'm reaping the consequences of my own actions. But I just needed to get this out of my system in the most anonymous and least judgmental way possible.